So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about the situation in Afghanistan, and I'm not going to pretend I have all the answers. I'm no expert on the Middle East. My knowledge of Afghanistan is extremely limited to pretty much some of the stuff I read in the news over the last 20, I'll say 20 years, not really 20 years, about 10 years. And also Metal Gear 5 to understand the layout of kind of Afghanistan to an extent. So I'm not going to pretend that I have all the answers. I'm going to give you the two answers I think people have given generally, and kind of the implications of both, and also some really bad takes I've seen from a guy I had a lot more respect for, and we'll get to him at the end of the video because I have lost a lot of respect for the geezer, but he's not that important in the grand scheme of this story. So, don't abandon Afghans who helped the UK, Labour warns the government. And this is kind of my take on it, that the government, you got Ben Wallace, who's the Defence Secretary, saying some people will be left behind when you knew this pullout was going to happen. Former President Trump announced this, and Joe Biden didn't go back on it. So you always knew this was going to happen. And also the fact that you could have talked to Joe Biden about this at any moment. You could have said, look, Mr. Biden, sir, are you going to get out of Afghanistan? Is this happening? And then you could have started the proceed to get people out of Afghanistan, British people and anyone you're going to give asylum to, which should be anyone who helped the British military out ever during the last 20 years. Any interpreter, any staff member, get them out because they're a target. They're most likely going to be murdered or arrested for helping the Western government out. But yeah, let's just, I'm a bit frazzled, I'm not going to lie, by the whole situation, but yeah. We'll just take the articles one by one and the tweets and stuff. So Labour has urged the government not to abandon Afghan workers who help British forces by allowing more of them to settle in the UK, which is absolutely correct. Many interpreters and other former staff are fearing for their lives as the Taliban continue to extend over control over the whole of Afghanistan. And by the time you're watching this is done. The Taliban have won in Afghanistan. They've taken over. Kabul has fallen. And the moment the capital has fallen, that's it. The former president of Afghanistan, he has gone to, I think it's Tajikistan. I'm not sure which country he's gone to, but he's out. You got Nick Thomas Simmons, Shadow Home Secretary, saying that they need a specific and safe asylum route, which is absolutely true. None of this, we want to let refugees in. They have to come through a legal point of entry. It's like, where are they? It's like, oh, there's none. Like, I don't want to see any of that. Especially Priti Patel, whose parents were refugees, should know a lot better. The government has said it should get more than 1,000 people a day to the UK. I mean, that might not even happen at this point, because you've got Ben Wallace again saying some people will be left behind, and also the fact that this airport might not be secure for long if the Taliban choose to attack it, because you ain't going to be able to defend a secure space like that if you're attacked from all sides. Not to mention the fact that these guys have like Stinger missiles. They can take planes out of the sky if they want to. Ben Wallace told the BBC the biggest barrier to increasing the rate of evacuation was not a lack of capacity, but how quickly people could be processed by officials, which should have happened months ago. And you could say I'm Captain Hindsight here, but there were massive warnings from intelligence agencies to government saying, look, Kabul will fall very, very quickly as soon as you pull out. And that's what happened. Kabul fell within, I think, a matter of weeks. Might have been quicker than any of the estimations, but you knew this was going to happen. And now you're telling us that some people are going to be left behind. Like, these people will be killed. How do you not understand this? US forces have secured the perimeter of the Kabul airport, where hundreds of Afghan and foreign workers are waiting for flights out. I mean, these people's lives are at risk here. The UK has also sent around 600 UK troops to assist with the withdrawal, so we had to send them back in. They weren't already there. We had to send them back in because we had no idea what we're doing. Parliament is only just being recalled to discuss the situation. Our Foreign Secretary, I'll discuss him when I get there. I'll discuss Dominic Raab when I get there. With Prime Minister Johnson promising to get all those who have helped out of the country, to get all of those who have helped the UK effort over the last 20 years out of Afghanistan as fast as we can. That's not going to happen. Ben Wallace has admitted as much, so that's a lie. And the BBC should correct the record there, but they're not going to, which really irritates me. Thomas Simmons has written to Priti Patel asking for an update. The situation in Afghanistan is truly awful. He said we must now live up to our obligations, especially to the Afghan people who work so bravely with British representatives in Afghanistan. Absolutely, we owe them. Absolutely, we owe them. We asked them to help us out, and now it's our turn. Our resettlement scheme must urgently be expanded to ensure people to whom we owe a huge debt to are not abandoned. The process must include looking to help Afghan workers who helped in vital areas such as military, media, and those who supported the work of the Department for International Development. 100%, I agree with Labour on this. Thomas Simmons said the Taliban return was likely to drive many thousands of people from their homes, with women and girls at particular risk. There are female journalists who are at absolute risk, who could be killed or forced out of their roles, essentially. The UK government must put in place specific legal asylum routes to help them. Last week, the government said about 2,000 Afghan interpreters and other people we have an obligation to would also be transported to the UK, joining about 3,000 who have already been taken out of the country, which is good news, but it should be anyone who helped us during the Afghan conflict and anyone whose life is at danger. These are the people we should be helping right now, and that is not happening. Currently, it's not about capacity on planes, it's about processing, which is something that the government could easily fix if we had the staff in place. But they weren't prepared for this at all. They weren't prepared for anything that's happened over the last year or two. Nothing. He added, if we can manage to keep the airport running in the ways we are putting in place, our people to deliver, and I'm confident that by the end of the month we could get everyone out, and actually hopefully sooner. That's not going to happen. Who's saying this? Sorry. Is this Ben Wallace? I mean, he's already contradicted his statement recently, and we'll talk about that in a minute. There will be some people left behind, so he's contradicted himself, to be fair. We made that clear in the last few weeks. I'm not going to raise expectations. So 1 minute he's saying, if we can manage to keep the airport running in the way we are, then I'm confident by the end of this month we can get everyone out. So 1 minute he's saying we can get everyone out. The next minute he's saying there will be some people left behind. Which one is it, Ben? Which one is it? Are you leaving people behind, or are you going to get everyone out? How do you contradict yourself within 2 sentences? And the BBC do not point the contradiction out. I don't understand. Ministers could do their very best, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care anymore. These guys are a bunch of jokers. Jack Straw had some interesting comments, because he was the Labour Foreign Secretary, who actually backed the invasion, saying a lot of good has happened over the intervening 20 years. A lot of death has happened. Mr. Straw said, adding that his disagreement was not over whether a withdrawal was needed, but how you did that. And that's kind of the thing that I'm kind of agreeing with Jack Straw about. Like, obviously, do I agree with withdrawing, Western forces? Yes. It's a war we cannot win. We've entered ourselves in on the side of warlords who are absolutely barbaric in their own right against other warlords and the Taliban who are absolutely barbaric in their own right. We had no idea what we were doing, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the point being is, when you get out of a situation, there's a stupid way to do it, which is how we're doing it now, and a more intelligent way of doing it, which is to keep forces in place, get everyone out who's at risk, and then you get out. At that point, once the military are the last people there, you get out. You don't abandon military bases really early on without telling your allies. Yes, the Afghan forces apple crumbled real quick, but at the same time, I can kind of understand why. They've been left to fight the Taliban, and the Taliban moved quick. You've got a list of dudes, Afghan military surrendered. And my question is, what the hell have they been training them for the last, 20 years? Because these guys folded. These guys folded real quick. But yeah, Conservative MP Nuskhani said the UK had let down Afghan workers who had trusted the UK, asking, what message are we sending now? Well, bro, like, you're a Tory MP, start trying to pass a motion in Parliament for the government to do more, for your party to do more. Of course, you're not going to do that because you're probably a coward in your own right. The Taliban has pledged not to allow Afghanistan to become a base for terrorists who could threaten the West, which I don't believe the Taliban on, but it would be smart for them to do so, because if they don't, then they might get invaded again. So, yeah, it's going to be Islamism in one country, most likely. There's a lot to discuss here. We can see kind of, these planes being boarded by massive amounts of people. This airport flooded, people desperate to get out, which this didn't have to be the situation if decent planning was in place. And I blame Joe Biden for that, but I also blame to an extent Boris Johnson and also NATO forces for allowing this situation to happen. You could have done a much more organised pullout of the situation. You chose not to. That's all I'm saying. You chose not to. UK confident it can get Britons out. Wallace, I mean, we've kind of discussed some of these bits to an extent, but he's saying, that some of those who are eligible to leave will be left behind. So, well done, mate. Sick one. You've had over a year to prepare for this, by the way. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Him choking up saying some people will get left behind, and it's sad that the West has done what it's done. I mean, sure, but it's sad that you have done what you have done, which is to abandon these people and not organise a proper pull-out of the situation. And surely, if we're this powerful nation again, surely we could have said to the Americans, look, we respect your plans, but we really need you to stay in a bit longer to help us get people out. unless that's a one-sided relationship, Ben Wallace. And let's not forget, they've had, since the Trump era, because Trump was the one who signed this agreement in February 2020. So they've had since February 2020 to organise this, well over a year, to figure out, all right, look, who are the people at risk and how quickly can we get them out? You've had over a year. And before anyone says, oh, that's hindsight and this, that's not the reality of the situation. When I get to the tweets, you'll see the intelligence services were warning, these governments, the UK and in the US, that this is what's going to happen. The Taliban are going to take over really quickly as soon as you get out. So I don't want to hear any of this Captain Hindsight nonsense, because they knew this. They were warned about this and chose not to listen. We go to some of the realities of the situation. This is a great thread, to give a small sense of the nightmare unfolding for Afghans. Weeks ago, her friend, a female TV journalist and a single mother of two, asked this person, Samira Shackle, to help this female journalist to get out of the country. And, there was a point where they managed to get a flight, but that's been cancelled. And the government help is not great. She was saying she's a English speaker, and she couldn't figure out how the government website worked for settlement and things like that. The US had vaguely said it will extend the program. This is about getting people out, but there are barely any info. Europe and the UK are silent. Canada is the only country to announce a major resettlement scheme, so shouts out to the Canadians, our good cousins. They said they'll take 20k Afghans, but no details on how this will work or how to apply. So maybe not so great, but at least they're doing more than other countries are. It says, look, she's a native English speaker, someone who researches things for a living, and found the info very unclear because they did not plan properly. Through a small charity, her friend could have got out, but that flight's been cancelled. So yeah, she has no idea if her friend will be murdered by the Taliban. Western countries spent the last 2 decades using every opportunity to utilise women in Afghanistan as a political talking point. So many women put their heads above the parapet, now they're being left to die. This is just one example, there are thousands more. And that is the case here, that these women will be murdered or forced back into the home. And some of these people should have been given refugee status from the Taliban. But, we're abandoning, I think, potentially British people there. So these people had no chance, really. And it's sad that this is the situation that's unfolded. In Afghanistan, this is another tweet from someone else, Satbir Singh, saying, in Afghanistan, we are seeing the reality of what it means to flee. The world changes overnight. You grab what you can and run. If a smuggler says, I can get you to safety, you put your life in their hands and you pay what you can. There is no form to fill. There is no queue to join, which is true. If you have the money and someone offers you a better life out of a war zone, an actual war zone where you will be forced to live under the sword, essentially, or the AK in this case, this is it, Chief. And, this is why, even without getting into the morality of it, the government's anti-refugee bill is simply divorced from reality, because this is a situation for so many more hundreds of thousands of people around the world, that wars happen, people are forced to flee. We've seen that in Libya, we've seen that in Syria, we've seen that across the world. When a war breaks out, what choice do you have? You can stay and fight, die, be that to, terrorists or government forces or whatever, or you try and forge a better life for yourself and you get out. And that's what people in Afghanistan have been forced to do. So this is a great thread here from this person, and a great thread here from Samira Shackle. And it's worth remembering that as this kind of happens, that no one had any idea what they're doing. Afghanistan potentially could have been a turning point if these people had any idea what the hell they were doing. If Western forces had any semblance of planning, something good could have happened here. But they didn't. And as Crystal Ball kind of tweets out bits of the Afghanistan papers, you've got a General Douglas Lute, the White House Afghan war czar under Bush and Obama, saying we didn't have the foggiest notion of what we were undertaking, because they had no idea what they're doing. They thought, we just go in there, murk the Taliban, get out. Put a nice puppet leader in, job done. Didn't happen. About Obama's surge, it was impossible to create good metrics. We tried using troop numbers, trained violence levels. They had no idea what they were doing, trying to spin this off as a win. The metrics were always manipulated for the duration of the war. If the American people knew the magnitude of the dysfunction, 2,400 lives lost, who will say this was in vain? Every data point was altered to present the best possible picture. Surveys, for instance, were totally unreliable, but reinforced that everything we were doing was right. This is what Afghanistan is Vietnam 2.0. That's what it was. Our biggest single project, sadly and inadvertently, of course, may have been the development of mass corruption. Ryan Crocker, ambassador to Afghanistan under Bush and Obama. They all knew this war had been... They all knew this war had long been a complete and utter disaster that strengthened the Taliban. President after president lied to the American people. Biden is the first one with the courage to do what they all need to be done, which is to get out. And, again, I'm not disagreeing with the pulling out of Afghanistan, because you had two options there. You stay indefinitely or you get out. But it's my problem is the way we have done this. And I'll get to that guy in a minute. But here you've got tweets from Snowden, which says that for weeks, Pentagon and military officials warned the White House and the State Department that the longer the Biden administration waited to order a drawdown or full evacuation of American personnel from Afghanistan, the more difficult the operation would be. So the White House did not give these forces enough time to get out of Afghanistan. They didn't plan this out properly. They literally left one of their biggest bases. I think it was the biggest base in Afghanistan overnight. They just left. Didn't tell anyone, went, dipped. And, this is one of the reasons why it's so chaotic now. People are going to be left there to die because Joe Biden and Boris Johnson and the NATO forces couldn't figure it out between them. All of these world leaders could not figure out how to get out of the country. They ignored weeks of it. They ignored all the intel. They were concerned about the appearance of a domestically damaging Saigon moment, which happened, by the way, and we'll actually look at that in a second. But, we can see here, unfortunately, the dates aren't on the tweets from Ken Klippenstein, but, Afghan government could collapse within 6 months after US withdrawal, new intelligence assessment says. We've got several days later. Taliban take over Kabul as Afghan president flees the country. They were told within 90 days this would happen. This happened far quicker than that, which you could say is the fault of the intelligence agencies. The only thing I would say is they knew the Taliban would take over very quickly, and they should have done far more about it. This the Saigon moment he's talking about. You've got, I think that's a Chinook, going to an embassy. Someone's making jokes. And here, there will be no circumstances you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. That happened, bro. Sorry, Joe, that happened. So, we see the picture here. Hopefully it's a real picture, but yeah, a Chinook and a Chinook. We go on, Ben Wallace, saying, some people will be left behind. He doesn't care though, does he? He really doesn't. And where is Dominic Raab? He's on holiday. Dominic Raab was advised not to go on holiday amid the Afghan situation, but he went anyway. So our Prime Minister hasn't got a clue what he's doing. He's only just recalled Parliament. Our Foreign Secretary is on holiday. Our Defence Secretary is saying, oh yeah, we'll get everyone out, but then some people will be left behind. Like, these people, so dumb. They're so dumb. They haven't got any clue between them. Absolutely no idea. So the main takeaways from this video, before I go on to the tweet from that person, is there was no good way of dealing with Afghanistan. You went into a situation where it was the Taliban versus, warlords and clans and all this stuff, and we sided with people who are, scum of the earth essentially, to defeat the Taliban. We should never have been in that situation and backed any of these people. But point being is, look, you stay there indefinitely, which I'm against. I don't think that's a smart option. Or you get out in an organised fashion. That's what I wanted to see. We get out, all of the people who would be deemed as potential victims of the Taliban should have been given refugee status and should have been brought to Western countries or, settled into neighbouring countries or wherever. If we had to pay for these countries to, resettle refugees, fine, so be it, because the situation now is you've got troops being sent back into Afghanistan to aid with the withdrawal. You don't have enough staff to process all of the kind of refugee applications, and even then you are risking being attacked by the Taliban in these secure airports because they can become unsecure real quick. These planes can get shot out of the sky really easily by the Taliban, who most likely have gotten some more sophisticated weaponry from some of these US bases or from some of the Afghan forces who surrendered or were killed. So that's the situation right now. I wanted to see an organised pull out of the situation. You had since February 2020 to figure it out, and this is what's happened. You've got former President Trump criticising President Joe Biden over the situation, saying, Joe Biden's left Afghanistan in failure. Like, bro, this was your plan? So we go to a tweet now from Kyle Kalinske saying, Mr. President, don't pull out like this. pull out more orderly over the course of a year, so the Taliban can take over in 2022 instead, and we can waste more money. Like, bro, like, I don't think, like, Kyle is a great commentator on a lot of things, but when it comes to foreign policy, like, sometimes the guy's an absolute dimwit. And in this situation here, had you waited another 6 months, yeah, it would have cost you more money, but you would have saved a lot of people, and a lot of people who could have actually, lived decent lives. They could have actually fulfilled their lives. Women, girls who could have gone to school, got an education, and got a proper job. Instead, now they're going to be forced to stay at home, essentially. And this is something the Americans and NATO forces could have facilitated: resettlement of people into better countries, whether that be the States, the UK, or countries which allow that give freedoms to women. But instead, my man's only just focused on money and the pullout. He's given so much credit to Joe Biden, but he's not talked about all of the civilians who have been sacrificed by Joe Biden by doing such a disorganized withdrawal of Afghanistan. And this is so horrific from Kyle. Honestly, this is embarrassing. And from a guy I respect a lot, I've lost a lot of respect for him. He's not important in this story, but seeing takes like this from people, I just find shocking that these are human beings we're talking about. And had you been more organized in the first place, or even just waited for a few more months to get out of Afghanistan, you could have saved so many people. But instead, my man's like, oh no, let's just save some money and get out. Like, okay, how much are these human lives worth to you then, Kyle? Because evidently they're not worth a lot. But yeah, what are the takeaways from this video? Withdrawal was always going to have to happen because the Taliban weren't defeated. They were just holed up in the mountains, waiting for their moment to get out. The main takeaway I want you guys to have from this video, main takeaways, is an indefinite stay was never going to work. Getting out was the right thing to do, but it's the process of withdrawing which is the key thing here. And we've just gone out. It's like, see you later, Afghans. I'm going home. Like, it's embarrassing, and I'm embarrassed for the government to have done this. I guess it's more on the Americans because they're the main military power. But the fact that we couldn't even lobby Joe Biden at all to help, with the withdrawal, progress it further, is just embarrassing. And I'm embarrassed that guys like Kyle sometimes are on the left, because when you see takes like this, you just think that, bruv, like, you're not on the team. Sorry, you don't want to help people, and it is telling that he thinks like this sometimes. But yeah, I'm incredibly frustrated by the situation. I hope the best for those the people that are going to be impacted by the Taliban, specifically kind of non-Muslims, and women and girls whose futures are going to be absolutely decimated by these barbarians. I've got nothing more to add to the situation. I don't really have any answers apart from an organised withdrawal was the best thing to do. But yeah, if you guys want to say anything more, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.